Everybody, during this segment here, we're going to be talking about integrations with Ryan Sullivan, our special guest today. Integrations is something that I think we in a roundabout way have talked about on various episodes.
Yeah.
But we've never really taken kind of a deep dive on integrations. And I think there are a lot of assumptions that people make about what it takes to integrate between two systems. And
today it just seems like everybody just assumes everything integrates with everything in one step, right? One click, it's integrated.
Right. And if I have a database and you have a database, we'll just integrate them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's quite that easy. And so luckily we have Ryan, who has years of experience working. I don't want to steal too much of his thunder. But our goal today is to find out, how what options were used to be available if you were integrating Dynamics NAV with something. How has that world changed? If you're now running Business Central on-premise or Business Central online, a newer version, like version 20, let's say, what do you need to know? So without further ado, welcome, Ryan. If you could, give us a little bit of your background. I think you have a really interesting background. A lot of our listeners here are users. They come from companies that are running Business Central every day, and maybe they're working on or planning an integration for something. So tell everyone a little bit about your background as it relates to Dynamics.
Sure. I actually started for a facility supplies distributor, small to medium-sized business, that as a contractor to design and implement a customer-facing website after a not so great go-around with the TradePoint product.
Mm-hmm.
This was about 8 years ago. They were using the Vision 2009. So the web services and things that are available today were not. They were available-ish, but not very functional.
Yeah, hardly.
So they existed in name anyway. they said they were there. So after creating this customer-facing website and getting it to integrate with Business Central to not only communicate inventory to the website for customers to see, billing information and things like that, but also taking the sales orders and putting them directly into Navision instead of using an email order form kind of thing where somebody would still have to double enter. The owner had a couple other requests for me to try to tackle, a lot of which dealing with like some business intelligence reporting kind of tools that were, again, not existent in Navision 2009. So developed some reports that could then be used to increase sales and all that kind of fun stuff. And then from there, it just kind of started spiraling like crazy. We actually ended up creating almost an entire warehouse management system for this customer. Eventually integrating scanners, barcode printers, license plating for pallets and things. So almost full-blown WMS that was created in-house, but also integrated directly with Business Central.
NAV.
Or I'm sorry,
NAV
Navision. Yes, NAV 2009. So through this whole process, I became a system administrator for them, as well as developer. Spent 8 years there playing with all the fun that Navision had to offer. Built most of this on PHP and SQL code, again, because APIs weren't available. So had to essentially create the APIs myself, the Navision 2009 API that these other platforms that we built could then communicate back and forth with. Also integrated it with some external third-party services, such as routing platforms, marketing tools, and things like that for email disbursement, etc.
So a lot of that was you had this other app sitting out there, and it was reading and writing data between this other app and Dynamics NAV through SQL.
Yes.
Mainly SQL kind of.
So yes,
Requests?
a lot of SQL queries being processed by PHP. So
Okay.
there were websites and portals built using HTML and JavaScript and all that fun front end stuff that makes it look pretty and fun. But PHP was really the programming language on the back end that was processing all the data and making the queries to and from SQL to create the entries, retrieve the data, display to the end user.
Okay.
Would you say what you did back then with Nav would be easier to do now with Business Central? And if so, why?
Oh, 1,000%.
1,000%.
1,000%. Just the ability to
That's 10 times easier.
Can we just say exponentially easier
yeah.
for all the non-math listeners?
So with Business Central, there's full capabilities with APIs depending on the version that you're running. There are some limitations when you start getting prior to Business Central 18, especially. But with the current version of Business Central, APIs are full-fledged, ready to go, as far as that's concerned. But to do the kind of queries to pull data and the code it took to actually create a sales header and create a sales body line from scratch on SQL calls. So validating data through my own script and then having SQL just insert that line directly in the table. So now you can update a document, call a post, or submit, and it's done. I mean,
And not only that, but I mean, done in a much better way, right? Where the Business Central is it's running it through kind of the front door,
yes.
right? To pass through the validations and things. Whereas I'm guessing on the back when you're going direct into the SQL tables, you're potentially bypassing some.
Oh, there were many a times where the software would, especially in the early on stages and new development as I kept growing this warehouse management system or any part of this where the direct SQL entries would definitely cause conflict because it was a misvalidation, a code field that wasn't capitalized.
Yeah.
So
right.
something as simple as that now with running it, like you said, directly through Business Central, you can run that validation right then and there, and it'll either error or it'll correct it, and everything's
Right.
good.
Yeah.
So do you prefer CAL over AL?
No.
No?
No.
So CAL being the old proprietary Dynamics code, AL being the new modern Visual Studio code.
You prefer the old one.
Oh, hands
No.
off.
You said
Or no,
You prefer CAL over AL.
You said, "Do you prefer Cal over AL?" And he said,
Oh,
"No."
he said no. Gotcha.
No. AL is definitely a lot cleaner.
You should have yelled out, "That's a trick question."
I thought I answered it the right way.
You did, yeah.
It's the beer, man. It's the beer.
No, AL programming is definitely much better than the old Cal programming. Just the speed and efficiency that it can be done at versus Cal is just tenfold. I mean, even back then, because of doing more of the integration kind of work with something that didn't have the capabilities to integrate, I did some Cal programming to make things happen, but primarily most of it was external to that entirely.
Wow.
So, but I did have some experience with Cal. Had it based on once we had the routing side and all that working, where it was populating the route inside the sales orders. Then inside Cal wrote a script that when we went to an invoicing script that would then run through that entire route and print everything up backwards so that it was right for the drivers, et cetera, et cetera.
Very nice.
So, I am not a developer, right?
Neither am I.
But my understanding is that there's generally kind of two ways that you can integrate. That you can, and maybe I'm, again, totally not saying this right, but you can do, it's possible that you can do a direct integration between two systems, right? So system A, system B, and they're just passing data back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can use a middleware type solution, which sits in the middle. And like, so message from system one, you pass it into the middleware translates that, and then transfers it over to system two, right? And goes back and forth. Is any pros or cons or thoughts about the use of those? Which one, if you had your preferences, which would be preferable?
Really depends on the situation.
Okay.
Me as an individual, I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I'm always going to opt for I want the control over what I'm sending to somebody else. So in an integration standpoint, if I'm requiring a third piece, a middleware,
Mm-hmm.
I can only be responsible for what's going to them, and then I'm hoping they're finishing the job correctly the other way. So I prefer direct integration. Now there are instances where a middleware is going to be required. Maybe for whatever reason, I really can't see a situation where it is, but there's potential for it. I haven't ran across one where it's necessary. I've seen where it's been used, but not necessarily necessary.
Well, like translating data, maybe. Like if I have LB for pounds and someone else has, the other system has LBS, I'm going to pass LB to them, and then it's going to translate that and send an LBS to the other.
Could be solved
system,
real easy
maybe?
with a reference table though inside of Business Central as well. That just says when your API is processing anything that's LB, make it LBS and send over. So you can handle all of that.
So there's a way to handle it in a direct communication, but maybe if you have a bunch of those, or there's really complex translations or mappings that have to go on, gymnastics or whatever.
Sure.
Maybe middleware. Okay, so go direct if you can.
Absolutely.
But if you can't, maybe then middleware might be required to handle the passing. Or if it's maybe is a middleware required when you have a potential what do you call it, two-way bidirectional?
No, most APIs can run asynchronously, so they can actually. There's synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous requires a response back before it can continue working. Asynchronous will continue to work without receiving a response, so they can work in two directions at the same time. So Business Central can be sending out calls while receiving calls, so there's no kind of conflict that would occur there.
Okay.
Where middleware might really come into play is something like for security reasons. Maybe there's security protocols that Business Central can't
read directly into another system?
Something along those lines, or even an internal server that then encrypts, or most of the communications across APIs are encrypted anyway using HTTPS. But if for some reason there's a security requirement that Microsoft Business Central can't handle, there might be a third party that can do deeper encryption or something like that.
Interesting. Okay.
There's a lot of apps, right? They use a third party that are coming to mind. The middleware, or no? Or are they all direct integrations?
Well,
I'm thinking of the ones that have portals and
an example, a couple examples that the most obvious example I think that for me comes to mind is with Microsoft. With Dynamics, you've got Business Central, and then there's Dynamics 365 Sales.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft is handling that integration through the Dataverse database. So right, Business Central actually writes all it's kind of keeping in sync with this Dataverse database, and then it's the Dataverse, that environment that's syncing data with D365 Sales.
Gotcha.
Right, it's not actually Business Central talking directly to D365 Sales. Behind the scenes, it's using this common data model behind the scenes. But other options, we worked with these couple add-on solutions. Expandit. Expandit has a mobile service product that we've deployed, and they have offline service capabilities.
Sure.
So, because if their service technicians need to go into an area where they don't have an Wi-Fi or internet access, they still need to be able to capture all this data. And then eventually at some point they go back, they upload that data into their database, and then it's synced when available back into Business Central.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, yeah, you're right. There's
Yeah.
certain situations. So, middleware if you need it. I
Yeah,
guess
and
is
those offline products are actually working off of a really tiny version of a database on the phone
okay.
that's storing it locally using local storage, which is a whole nother topic for a whole nother day.
That's another podcast.
But
There's actually a limit to how much can be stored then?
potentially based on the device you have, sure. But for the most part, it's using really small databases,
Right.
SQLite, something like that, and it's compressing that at such a high rate that,
Yeah.
but
But even
then it
other
gets dumped.
even e-commerce, there's e-commerce solutions out there, or some omni-channel products where you're selling through eBay, Amazon, Walmart, maybe some other online portals. They capture all that data down into a database, and then from there the orders are pushed in.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a middleware. Something like Channel Advisor is one that comes to mind. So they're gathering all these kind of orders from all these different places, or communicating from all these different sites, and then the integration is from that product to Business Central. So all the
Right.
orders, so it's one funnel
mhm.
to Business Central or from Business Central, even though you may have all these different
Right.
points.
The perfect example, yeah. Instead of writing an integration directly to Amazon and this, that, and the other, somebody took care of those channels already, and you're only working with the point-to-point between
right.
the middleware and the
Yeah.
yeah.
So why don't you like the offline databases? Like
What's
with
that?
Expanded, you said you kind of thought it was stupid the way they did it?
Oh no! It's about the only way you can do it. I said
Oh.
after you get connected, it dumps the data.
Oh.
So for your space question, no, did you hear it's junk?
Yeah. I heard
Okay,
it's
no.
dumb.
I said it dumps
Oh,
the
okay,
data.
gotcha.
So I was actually working on a product that was going to do this at the old company. So for service guys and things like that. But yeah, once you get reconnected to the internet, there's a process running there in the background that says, "Where's my internet? Where's my internet? Where's my?" As soon as it sees it, it says, "Here you go. Here's all my data.
Yeah,
Free up my
pushed
space."
it forward.
Yeah.
So definitely, so with Business Central Online, I know that you cannot, you don't have any direct access to the SQL database, right? So
Correct.
you can't do like SQL views
Correct.
or triggers or things like that maybe with an on-premise solution you could, right? So that's, you have to use APIs, basically,
Yeah.
is the...
Yes. So and through Business Central, even on premise through Business Central, you don't have the visibility of SQL either, other than through queries, page data, those kinds of things. But I guess with an on-premise environment, you do have direct access to SQL as the.
Yeah, if you want it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's frowned upon, but
yes,
you could, yeah.
Why is it frowned upon?
direct data entry causes a lot of corruption. You could something like I said, early days, something as small as unit of measure, which is a code field. If it passed through as a lowercase EA instead of an uppercase EA, crash the item every time you crash nav. So,
Yeah. Or
direct
wrong,
SQL.
wrong format on a date,
yep,
maybe.
yeah,
Because
So-
those validations are stored in actually the Business Central code that validates that to make sure it's in the right format. And if you're just pushing it into a field directly into the SQL database, it doesn't have an opportunity to pass through that code.
So can't you code something to where if it doesn't line up to be exactly how
you
it's
rewrite the validation.
You have to be aware enough to
Right.
know that
Yeah.
I need to make sure that that doesn't happen. And yes, then.
So once you crash the system, you learn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, yeah.
You do it 5, 10 more, 20 more times, but yes, you learn eventually.
Yep. Now, and one of the other things I know that is important is if like sometimes if you can't, maybe some integrations aren't done through a direct like real time API, but you're going to get a file. So let's say an e-commerce site
Sure.
once a day is going to kick off a file with like 100 orders in it. And we're going to grab that file and we're going to import that file as sales orders into Business Central. There's issues with that in terms of that file, where that file needs to sit.
Limitations, yeah. The software as a service version of Business Central Online doesn't have local file storage that's accessible. So even though you can upload a file directly from your machine and download a file from Business Central, the actual online environment doesn't have file storage that's accessible. So there are options though, using Azure Blob Services storage that you can transmit files to and from using it like a local directory on your computer as if you were on-prem.
Gotcha. It's more technical than what I know or have any idea.
Michael, you've been
So I'm gonna
very
be
quiet.
quiet during this
You've
segment?
been very quiet. No, so I think, we'll kind of wrap this up. Thank you for joining us. I think the key takeaway for me is that if you're planning on an integration or you're working on an integration, well, first of all, hopefully there already is a completed integration done for you out of the box, right? Hopefully someone has already created an integration from some product or database to Business Central
And seeing it.
and you can just plug this app in and it's built, right? It works. But if there's not, there's a lot of factors that you need to consider.
Oh, absolutely.
That you cannot just assume that because the application can handle APIs or has APIs, that there's an integration. That
So you can't make anything integrate,
How much time and money do you have?
but if it's unlimited,
Potentially. I mean, realistically, there's always a way, right? So if there was some limitation and we had to write our own APIs out in a cloud service that could then communicate back and forth, there's always a way. But within reason, there are definitely things that won't integrate together, sure.
So Ryan, is this a fair analogy? Let's say I've got two pieces of land separated by a body of water,
Okay.
and I want to connect these two pieces of land. APIs for each side would be basically like the foundation of the bridge, right? I've got this foundation on one side, I've got the foundation on the other side. So those are the APIs. But the integration is the actual building of the bridge.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So it's making the two APIs communicate successfully together through data mapping so that they understand what each other is saying. Most common APIs anymore are going to be working on JSON, which is a standard file format that for data transmission. So that kind of got handled back in years ago. You had to worry about a couple of different formats that people were using.
Okay.
But so that's pretty standardized now. XML is still another big one, but it's the data mapping that when BC sends data to another API, that customer number in BC may be a just number at this end of the other API. So just make those little translations and mappings so that they understand.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And you said, can we make this integration work? Yeah. How much time and money do you have? Right.
if it's unlimited, people got it. If not,
any other
tips or
words of wisdom or
when looking to do an integration or looking at a third-party software with Business Central in mind, be cautious. Make sure it works, especially if they approach it with the mindset that we integrate with everything. Early on, when I came in on the Navision 2009 side, there was a lot of products that we looked at and, we can integrate with that, we can integrate with that. Microsoft is a fantastic product, and they have so many great extensions and things that are out there, but not everybody can just integrate with them, even though they tell you can. Eventually they can, but for, again, that time and money thing that they underestimate a lot of times. So the key things to look at is, does the third-party software that you want to integrate with Business Central, do they have well-documented APIs? Because then somebody can look at those APIs and have a sounder decision on, will it actually integrate well or not? Does it have the functionality and the methods necessary to be able to communicate successfully with Business Central and Business Central back? We kind of talked about the file exchange. Is the integration requiring file exchange? If so, again, it's doable, but there's going to be added expenses with needing more Microsoft services through Azure. So is that something that you're requiring? Just budget that in. And which version of Business Central are you running? Like I said earlier, BC18 on, you're probably pretty safe. 18 still has some limitations, but not nearly as much as before. And if you're with the capabilities of the APIs.
Okay, great, thank you. I hope that people listening, they may be sitting here like with the look that Michael has on his face right now.
I was just gonna say, make sure you see the integration before you buy anything.
But my takeaway is, proceed with caution, right? That to do some due diligence, ask some questions, and maybe make sure that you understand what's going to be involved.
Yes.
Because it could be as simple as a few hours, or it could be months of effort. On the other hand, right?
Absolutely.
So.
All right. Well, Will Smith got jiggy with it. We got technical with it. So, on to the next segment, which is we're going to take a look at some integration apps and talk a little bit about them.